Good morning. Today is April 15th, 2020. It is Wednesday morning, and so welcome back to another day of virtual learning. And let's go ahead and jump right into the lesson. So, you know the routine. Go ahead and prepare your resources for today. You do need something to write with, something to write on, as well as dictionary.com pulled up. And you'll be using the full copy of A Midsummer Night's Dream today. You will not be using the Act 5 part unless you need it. And so go ahead and just pull up the text as well. Take 1 minute to get your resources together. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. So today's objective, students will be able to demonstrate an understanding of plot structure in A Midsummer Night's Dream by summarizing character conflicts and resolution. So congratulations on finishing your first Shakespearean text. As far as I know, A Midsummer Night's Dream was not an easy read. It was definitely challenging, but you all made the most of it, especially while you were in class, and I'm sure you made the most of it while you were outside of class too. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this with you all, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well. So, to go ahead and start off, in order for you to understand the plot structure and the character conflicts, we do need to do a review on what plot structure actually is. And so, we know that plot is the structure or organization of events that make up a fictional story. And there are 5 components of a plot diagram. And so I do want you to draw this plot diagram in your notes as I'm speaking, and then I'll give you a little time to finish writing as well when I'm done. So the first component is your exposition. That's the beginning of the story. 3 things you're going to have in your exposition: conflict, character, and setting. So usually, of course, you're introduced to the characters and the setting first, and then after you know the characters and where the story is taking place, which is the setting, then you know the conflict. What is the problem that's happening? Next, you're going to have your rising action. So those are all of the events. Those are all of the events that happen before the climax. And so that's when the character's trying to solve the problem, but they're continuously failing. In order for it to be like a good story, usually there are going to be some failed attempts. There are going to be some encounters. Excuse me. There are going to be encounters and obstacles, and so you are going to be facing those in the rising action. And then, of course, you have your climax. We all know this is the turning point. The greatest suspension happens here at the top of our diagram. And that's just when we have our most suspenseful action in the story. Once we've reached our peak of the story, then we start to kind of simmer down a bit. And so we go into our falling action, which is everything that occurs after the climax. Just any events that happen after that turning point are considered falling action because the story is starting to calm down a bit now. And then lastly, you have your resolution. This is the end of the story where your conflict is resolved. So this is where we get our resolution, and it's also where we get our theme. Usually when the problems are solved, because the characters have gone through so many obstacles to get that problem solved, it's going to come with a theme or a lesson learned, something that you can take away from that story. I'll give you about 30 more seconds to wrap up your notes on this slide. Okay, and so Plot is, of course, a component of fiction, and then there's another component of fiction that I want you to be familiar with. I have gone over this before, but let's just do this as a refresher because you are going to be working with this today for the lesson. And so you need to know your thinking jobs for fiction. And so if you remember, I gave you two ways that you can annotate fiction when you're doing passages or when you're doing stories. The first way is to use that plot diagram. You can draw a plot diagram on your passage and you can fill it in as you go along so that you understand the structure because, as you know, when you have fiction, you are going to most likely get a best summary question, and this will help you answer those questions, as well as questions about the conflict. If you don't want to draw the plot diagram, then the other option I gave you was to just answer your thinking jobs as you go along. And so our thinking jobs are what are questions that we are going to ask ourselves when we are reading a fiction story. So the first one is, who are the characters? Very similar to your exposition, which is when your characters are introduced to you. Something else introduced is your problem. And so you're going to say, ask yourself, what is the problem? This is going to cover, again, your exposition, but also it's going to cover your rising action as well, because you are going to continue to encounter problems depending on the type of story that you are reading. Those problems will build upon each other. And so that takes you through to the climax, and then you get to the point where you're at. How does the problem get resolved? And so a lot of that is going to be your falling action and your resolution as to how that problem is being taken care of at the end of the story. And then ultimately, again, with every story, we want to be able to take away a theme or a lesson learned. So that's your fourth thinking job. What is the theme or lesson learned? I'll reiterate these one more time and take a moment to write them in your notes. Who are the characters? What is the problem? How does the problem get resolved? And what is the theme or lesson learned? And so we're going to be doing that today. If you go to your general tab in Teams, you'll see that, and you go to the assignments, you'll see that today you have an assignment that is titled April 15th assignment. And so this is going to basically be answering your fiction jobs for A Midsummer Night's Dream, but you are going to be doing it for each character conflict that we encounter. So that I know that you understand the plot structure of A Midsummer Night's Dream, because we have so many stories going on at once. And so you're going to be looking at who are the characters, what is the problem, how does the problem get resolved, and what is the theme or lesson learned. And you're going to do that for each of these characters. So I've already done the characters part for you. You are going to fill in the problem, how it gets resolved, and the theme or lesson learned. So your characters are Hermia and Aegeus, Lysander and Hermia, Helena and Demetrius, Titania and Oberon, and then Bottom and his friends. And I have a hint here for Bottom and his friends. I want you to think about the goal they have to put on this awesome play, and tell me what the problem is and how it gets resolved there, which is going to be in Act 5. You may note that some of these characters may have multiple problems. And so Lysander and Hermia, they have multiple problems that they encounter, as well as Titania and Oberon. And so you're just going to choose the one that best allows you to complete the chart, keeping in mind that I do expect you to have textual evidence. So I want one piece of textual evidence for each character situation. So I want one piece of textual evidence on this row for Hermia and Aegeus, one piece of textual evidence for Lysander and Hermia, anywhere on this row. So your evidence can be in the problem part, it can be in the resolution, or it can be in the theme. It does not have to be in all three, but I do need to see some. And so I'll show you what that looks like on this next slide. It's going to just pop up right here for you. So again, you're going to go to General Assignments, April 15th assignment. And if you look here, I have done the first one for you. And so we're just doing that together. The characters are Hermia and Aegeus. Our problem here is that Hermia wants to marry Lysander, and her father Aegeus wants her to marry Demetrius. Aegeus takes Hermia to Theseus, who gives her an ultimatum: marry Demetrius or choose between death and becoming a nun. So that's our problem with Hermia and Aegeus. They're not seeing eye to eye, and so he takes her to Theseus, who gives her this ultimatum. How does this problem get resolved? Well, there's a few solutions here. Lysander confesses to Theseus and Aegeus that he and Hermia intended to flee and be married. So their first attempt at solving the problem was running away. And as we know, that was not the resolution. That was a part of the rising action and climax. Our resolution comes when Demetrius then confesses that his love for Hermia has disappeared. So Theseus chooses to recant his previous statement and allows the lovers to marry who they choose with no consequences. That's our resolution there, is that once Demetrius says he no longer loves Hermia, Theseus then decides that Hermia can marry who she chooses because there's no point in marrying Demetrius if he does not love her and she does not love him. Our theme or lesson learned. The theme here can be summed up with Lysander's proclamation that the course of true love never did run smooth. There's our textual evidence there. You can find this in Act 1, Scene 1, line 136. And so note how I took one of our most powerful quotes from this story and I made that into our theme. You don't have to have a quote for the theme column of every one. So, for example, if you want to put your evidence where the problem is instead, or you want to put your evidence where the resolution is instead, that's fine, as long as for each character conflict, I see textual evidence. And so just to continue reading, explain your theme, of course. Lysander and Hermia had to go through extreme obstacles to be with one another, but ultimately true love conquered all. And so that builds on that quote again, that the course of true love never did run smooth. You could also say true love conquers all is a theme here as well. And so I hope this example helps you. I'm going to go ahead and release you to do the other four character conflicts on your own. And I really want you to try your best so that I know we understand what happened in the story because there were so many different character conflicts. And so just one final time, it's going to be in your general tab, assignments, and it's going to be the April 15th, 2020 assignment. This is due by 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. So it's due by the end of class tomorrow. Remember, I'm giving you 24 hours to get assignments done so that I can grade them throughout the day and get you feedback. Do not forget your other assignments. I have been taking them late because I know that there's been technical difficulties, but you do need to be submitting those so that you can be getting grades regularly. As always, I'm online if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Please reach out if you need me.